उनके रिप्लाई।
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, guys. I hope I am audible.
Sir, Tanya would like to open up something important.
Okay, sure.
Tanya, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I, Tanya Gupta, welcome you all to another week of BBI Camp Professional Training Program. Hope everyone had a learning and coding week. So, here I have some important information about the same. Many students have requested us to share the recordings of the session so that they can revise the concept. I would like to mention here that our entire program is based on live interactive sessions with the mentor where students can freely ask their doubts and clarify at the same point while learning. We are providing you half an hour separate doubt sessions as well with mentor after every class. And all your doubts are also taken up over WhatsApp group by Kajal ma'am immediately. Also, we have shared you all the codes through GitHub. Moreover, cheat sheets are uploaded on all social media handles. We are retelecasting the entire session for those who might have missed the class due to network connectivity and schedule for the telecasting has already been shared with everyone. Also, we are doing one more step towards it and we will be uploading the video of summarized basic concepts of each session over our BBI Camp YouTube channel. We'll share the details of the channel over WhatsApp group and through mails by Monday evening before the session. Now, it's a humble request for all students to post important and relevant doubts only in the chat box. Do not post about connection problems as it hamper the pace of the class. So happy studying, guys. Let's welcome our mentor to start our session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Tanya. So, guys, some points I want to add in this. Uh, During the doubt session, because we have planned a half an hour doubt session. So you have the questions, and those questions I will pick, and because there are some flow is going on and there are some other questions are coming up which is not related to the flow. So you can park your question and you can, because you have a half an hour session, so we can pick those things so it would not interrupt the flow, because that is a feedback I have received, because I just watch your feedbacks you have filled up. And one more feedback I have received, that is the mixed feedback. Some they want the speed is correct and some they want the speed is low. So I just maintain the pace. So during whatever the thing we are learning, and you have the similar sort of doubt, so you can raise it. But if some sort of other doubts, like some of them are asking the things which is coming on the future, like React thing or a PWA thing or what, so you can park those questions for the last half an hour. I hope, guys, you understand this point, so it would not interrupt our pace, right? So now I'm going to start the things first of all, and we have done the thing, that is we have done with the Greet app application. Now today is the planning is to understand the Ajax thing. So we will understand how the JavaScript is going to fetch the data from the server, or how it send the data to the server. So it is actually integration with the backend. Still, we do not learn the backend thing because we just start the JavaScript thing. So the backend thing is just a black box for us. So we start with a thing that is called Ajax. So I just give you a glance what exactly the Ajax. Ajax is basically called asynchronous. So A stands if I mix everything, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So we already know the JavaScript because we work from last 2 classes, we are working on the JavaScript. Now the new term is asynchronous. The XML is something outdated because when the Ajax is created, it is actually created around year 2000. So it means 20 years back, they have created the Ajax, and that is initially used by the thing that is Google. I mean, the Google search engine is actually using the Ajax stuff. So what exactly the Ajax? Ajax means you are actually communicating to the server. So there is some backend. So that backend can be written on any language. So that's why I just treat it is a black box. It might be written on a PHP, or it might be written on a Node.js, or might be it is written on Java. It could be anything, right? And the client side, which is we are using, that is a JavaScript. That's why we are learning this Ajax on client side, because it is built by the JavaScript, right? So JavaScript is actually talking to the server. So it is talking to the server, and server is actually giving a response. So we are raising a request to a server, and we are getting a response. But now this time we are not getting a page as a response. We are actually getting some data as a response, right? So we are not getting a page, we are getting actually our data as a response. That data can be of XML format. So XML format is very close to like HTML format. So it is in form of tag, opening tag and closing tag, or either we will receive the data in form of JSON. So JSON is very close to JavaScript object. So it means the data would be in key and value pair. Believe me, most of the websites right now working on the JSON style, XML is like a dinosaur. So it means it has become a history. So old systems is using the XML, but now the newer systems are working on the JSON part. So if we just change this name, so we can say this is like a AJ, right? It is like asynchronous JavaScript and JSON, but older name is XML. That's why we are calling Ajax. I hope guys this makes sense. What actually we are going to learn today. The agenda is basically we are actually communicating with the server, and we are fetching the data from a server, right? So practically where it will fit. So we just go to the Google, and in Google, if you just see, first time when we open a Google, it is actually fetching the page. So you can think like when you're typing google.com on your browser, so it is actually fetching the page from a Google server, and the page is get render on our screen, right? So the page is get render. It means the HTML is coming from the server. The CSS is coming from the server. So HTML is whatever the text box, the buttons is, all these things are created by HTML. And today the second F agenda is to learn the HTML stuff, right? So it is pretty much easier compared to a JavaScript. So we start with the HTML stuff. So that it means how to create a button, how to create a text box, these kind of stuff. And CSS is mostly on the styling side. So it means server is sending the HTML, server is sending the CSS. I mean the styling side. Styling side says the button is coming on a center. That is the styling, right? What would be the font of this button? What would be the width of this button? The border is rounded. So these all things are actually taken care by the CSS stuff. I hope guys this makes sense. So HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript, everything plus images. It means this is the image, right? Google, this is the image, and some icons. So it means icons are also coming from a server. Even the font. So these all stuff are coming from a server. That is a point. So it means server is sending you what? Server is sending HTML, server is sending CSS, server is sending JS, server is sending images, icons, fonts, a lot of stuff, right? So it means when you are loading a page from a server, that page is much bigger because it has a lot of stuff, right? So the first time we can take this pain because we are waiting for a page to load. But when the pages get loaded, we don't want the page is reload again. We want whatever the new things is coming, it is actually picking the data only. It would not re-render the page. It means it would not pick the new HTML, it would not pick the images, it would not pick the icons, it would not pick the fonts. So we will see here how this thing happens. So for example, if from here, if I am writing here, let's say I am writing BMW car, right? So when I'm typing BMW car, so if you just see from where BMW car is coming, this is actually coming from the backend. It is coming from the server. But if you just see, Is it picking? Is it fetching the HTML? Is it fetching the CSS? Is it fetching the JavaScript? Is it fetching the images, icons, fonts? No, it is not picking anything. It is just fetching pure data. When it is fetching pure data, so the volume of data is always on the bytes or in the KB, but the volume of the page from the server, it would be of MB, right? That's why the AJAX comes in the picture. So it means AJAX is actually the fitment to instead of reloading the page again and again, so it will impact the performance. Instead of reloading the page again and again, we actually reload the data only, right? Instead of reloading the page. Make sense? So this is how the Google is using in their search. So in their search engine, they have used this AJAX thing. Whenever you make a search, it is actually using the AJAX, and AJAX is entirely built by the JavaScript itself. So it means if you off the JavaScript in your browser, you already know how to off the JavaScript in the browser. So if you switch off the JavaScript, your AJAX will off. Make sense, guys? I hope, guys, this concept is clear to all of you why we are learning this AJAX stuff. So we want to communicate to the server and we want to fetch the data. We are not fetching the page. So the page is fetched once and only the data is keep changing. So this is the first example to understand the AJAX stuff. We move to the second example to understand more. So let's say if I go to the flipkart.com. So first time when the Flipkart is open, so it means first time when your Flipkart is get open, it is actually loading the entire page. So it will take a lot of time, right? Because images, everything is actually coming from the server. So a lot of images, a lot of HTML, a lot of CSS, a lot of fonts, icons, all of this stuff are coming from the server. But when we're searching something, for example, I'm searching mobiles. So if you just check this out, when I'm searching this mobiles, this particular section, if you just see, this particular section is constant. It would not re-render again. Only this portion is get re-render and this portion is get re-render because this portion is actually fetching the data. So it means the data is get re-render instead of re-rendering the page. So let's check this out. If I click on 6 GB phone, so keep your eye on the header and keep your eye on this body section of this, right? So if I click on 6 GB and above, so you will see it is actually reloading this portion only. I mean the data portion, it is reloading. If I choose the minimum budget is, let's say I'm saying 16,000. So it is showing, right? So it means it is reloading what? It is reloading this data portion. It is not reloading the page again. I hope, guys, this makes sense because the page layout is actually loaded first. So it is not reloading the page layout again and again. It is only loading the data part of it. Right, guys? I hope, guys, this thing is clear. So you can even say your confirmation on yes or no. It means if this thing is not clear, so you can ask the related doubt, right? If this is clear, so I will move ahead. If you understand why we are learning this AJAX, right? All right, so we have the understanding why we are learning this AJAX stuff, and actually we're understanding this AJAX stuff is actually needed for JavaScript communication purpose, right? So it means JavaScript is actually talking to a server. So I hope you all understand this AJAX is the absolute need of creating the applications. It means if you think like if your application does not have AJAX stuff, think like if your application does not have this AJAX stuff, so it means whenever you make a server call, on each server call, you are actually fetching the page. And if you're actually fetching the page, so it means you're fetching the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, fonts, a lot of stuff you are going to fetch. So yeah, the user experience is bad because the lot of data is coming from the server. So network cost is huge, plus the rendering cost is huge. That's why developer want to use the AJAX, right? So they want the first time they will load the page, and on subsequent requests they are fetching the data only, not fetching the page again and again. I hope, guys, this makes sense. That's why on our day one I told you if you want to become a developer, you must be aware of JavaScript, because if you're not aware with the JavaScript, you are half developer. You can work only on the backend side. You cannot handle the front, right? Because if you do everything on a backend, so it means every request you are fetching the page. You are not actually fetching the data, and through AJAX you can do this stuff, right? Now we are actually breaking the stuff because I am not directly jumping to the Ajax, right? So if I directly jump to the Ajax, I hide a lot of things. So that's why I don't want to hide a lot of things. We want to go deep in this Ajax stuff, right? So we just move here and we understand this Ajax, the first terminology is called A, right? So we pick the first terminology that is called A. So I'm picking this thing. A is stand for asynchronous. We know this is asynchronous, right? And we are using with asynchronous with the JavaScript. So what we understand with the word called asynchronous, right? So when we are writing a code, the code would be either asynchronous or synchronous, right? So synchronous code is more like in C language, if you use printf, and let's say you write printf 5 times, one after another. So it means when the first printf will run, so the second printf is actually waiting to complete the first one. Once the first is completed, then it moved to the second. Then it moved to the third, then it moved to the fourth, then it moved to the fifth. So this style is called synchronous, right? So when you are writing this kind of stuff, that is A equals to 10 and B equals to, let's say, 20 and C equals to A plus B, this is again a synchronous stuff. It means once the A's get initialized, then it will move to the second line, then it will move to the third line. I hope, guys, this thing is clear to everyone what exactly the synchronous. It means if you're coming from a C background, if you're coming from the C++, if you're coming from the Java, you're actually using the asynchronous style of coding, right? Oh, sorry, synchronous style of coding. It means every code is sync, right? So it means it will run one line, then the first line is completed, then it moved to the second line, then it moved to the third line, right? But asynchronous, when we talk about the asynchronous stuff, it is called non-blocking code. So can we say the synchronous is basically called blocking way? It is a blocking way of code. So it will block the code. When the first line is executed, then after this, the second line will be executed. So why we need this asynchronous? There is a huge reason for this. So I am right now on the synchronous stuff, right? Synchronous is making a blocking code. So guys, if you feel any benefit of this, so you can just raise, you can just suggest on a chat window, is you find any benefit of synchronous code, or if you find any disadvantage of synchronous code, right? So we can just do a quick discussion. So I will understand what you understand by the synchronous stuff. So the synchronous is blocking one, right? So any advantage you find out when you are using a synchronous? Any suggestion, guys? On your chat window you can write. Any advantage of synchronous code that is called block? So can we say synchronous is like somebody says, yeah, sequential. That is a correct word. That is a sequential execution of a code. So it means you are actually doing sequence-wise code, right? So it means if you have 10 lines of code, it will run one after another, right? So what is the disadvantage you will feel? If it is a synchronous, it is a blocked, what sort of disadvantage you will feel? The disadvantage is, for example, you want to read 3 files, right? You want to read 3 files and your code is synchronous. So your first line of code is going to read the first file and your second line of code will going to read the second file, right? And the third line of code is going to read the third file. Suppose your first file is actually consuming, let's say 3 seconds. Suppose it consuming 3 seconds. This actually consuming 4 seconds. It actually consuming 5 seconds. Suppose. So what will happen? It means the first statement is going to consume 3 seconds. So it means the second statement is actually wait for 3 seconds. I hope this thing is clear. It is wait for a 3 seconds to complete the first statement. Then the third statement is actually dependent on the 4 seconds plus 3 seconds. So it wait for 7 seconds, right? That is the issue, right? So many of them understand this is the synchronous behavior, right? So do you know what is the prevention for solving this? I mean, can I read 3 files parallelly? Can I read 3 files parallelly? So we need to learn something called parallel programming. We need to learn something called parallel programming. This parallel programming is coming on the feature called multi-threading. So there is a feature called multi-threading. So what is thread? If no one knows what is thread, thread is basically code in execution. So whatever the code is running is called thread. So like in C language, when you start everything with a main, so main is a thread, right? So some of them say it's a process. No, it's not a process. Process is a bigger thing. Like my VS Code is running in my machine, it is a process, right? But in my VS Code, if spell checking is running, in my VS Code, if spell checking is running, it is a thread, right? So we are talking about the threads. As a developer, we can only learn threads, right? We can create threads. We can communicate between the threads, right? So process is most of the time handled by the operating system stuff, right? So process handling is different thing. We will learn on the Node.js side. Make sense? So the point is thread is what thread is. Whatever the code is right now is executed is called thread, right? Like in C language, when the main is running, main is our thread, right? So it means if your code, let's say this 3 statements inside the main, so it means main is acting as a thread. You can think like main is acting like a thread for you, right? And this thread is right now get blocked. It is get blocked because the first file is we are reading. The second file is in wait, right? It is in a wait. But if I want to read multiple files, so I need to run multi-thread. So I need to run multi-thread. Make sense? So multi-thread means if a one thread is a one code of execution, so multi-thread means multiple code of execution. If multiple code of executions are running, so we need multiple cores in our system. So you know, in our CPU there are multiple cores. So I need to use multiple cores. Make sense, guys? So the problem with the multi-threading is it need a very good amount of hardware, right? So if you're going to read 50 files, so you need multiple cores, right? So you can assume like if one thread, think like if one thread is reading one file, and suppose it is consuming one core of your machine. So if you are going to run 50 files, it means if you're going to read 50 files parallelly, you need 50 cores machine, right? So your hardware cost will drastically increase. I hope guys this makes sense. What is the limitation of the synchronous? So if somebody asks what is the disadvantage of synchronous, so you're saying synchronous is very, very bad when you are going to read the files, right? Because if you're going to read the files, it is making a threads, right? So because it is doing the parallel stuff. If it is doing this parallel stuff, so it create a threads, and threads are actually dependent on your cores, right? So it will require a huge amount of your hardware, right? Now the point is, what is the remedy of this, right? How we can read multiple files? I mean, I want to read the multiple files, but I don't want to use a lot of multi-threading stuff, right? So how it is doing it? Let's understand this thing. I hope guys this thing is clear. So I'm just clearing out this thing. If anyone have any question regarding thread or CPU cores or synchronize, so you can raise your questions, right? And difference between the multi-threading and the threads, right? So it means you're doing the parallel stuff. So what sort of programming is doing these kind of stuff? Java is one of them. So Java is supporting multi-threading. C# is supporting multi-threading. Python is supporting multi-threading. Ruby with Rails is supporting multi-threading. So most of the programming supports multi-thread, right? So it means most of them approaches to do this multi-threading stuff. But JavaScript is not. JavaScript does not support this kind of stuff, right? So JavaScript, why? JavaScript does not support this kind of stuff because JavaScript is running on the client side. And if the client side is doing the multi-threading, so if client side is doing this multi-threading, so the problem with this is it actually consumes a lot of CPU power of the client, right? So for example, if you are running a one website, it is consuming 5 cores of your machine, so you would not visit this, right? So it means if you have a lot of computations, a lot of multi-threading stuff, so always recommended do it on a server side, don't do it on the client side, because client side must be on the lightweight side, right? This thing already JavaScript knows. That's why what JavaScript does, JavaScript says, I am doing this kind of stuff. I am doing this kind of stuff by the mechanism called single thread. So if anyone asks, JavaScript is multi-threading? No, it is not. It is single threaded. So it has only one thread. Now the problem start. If it is single threaded, how it is actually going to read multiple things, right? So if it is a single thread, how it is going to read multiple things. So let's understand this thing with a one example. For example, we start with a thing called, we have, let's say, some hotel, or we have, let's say, some restaurant, right? And in restaurant, we have different cooks, right? These cooks are actually doing some heavy stuff. So I'm saying this cook is basically for Spanish food, right? It is, let's say, for North Indian food, right? It is for, let's say, for South Indian food, and we have a lot of cooks for this, right? So think like these cooks are like a thread. These cooks are like a thread because they are doing some own stuff. It means if this cook is responsible to read some data from, let's say, X server, this cook is actually reading the data from Y server. This cook is responsible to read the data from Z server. Make sense? So how the JavaScript doing and how the Java or C# doing the stuff? Whenever a new request is coming to the server, so if a new request is coming from a server, for a server, right? So for example, we have a lot of customers on the internet. So I just correlate two different stories, right? One is the restaurant story, and I want to map this restaurant story on client server architecture, with a client server architecture. Remember this thing. So it means I want to interlink this restaurant story with a client server architecture. So think like this is your server area, and inside your server you have multiple threads, which you can think like these all are background threads. These all are background threads because these are the cooks in your restaurant. They are actually fetching the data from some backend, right? Now you have plenty of requests are coming up. So you are actually receiving some requests. So you can assume like you have a web page. On a web page, you are clicking on one button. So this is a one request. You click on another button. This is a second request. So you are on a one web page because you are on a client side. And on one web page, you have different buttons. So for example, the first button says, I will pick what is the weather, right? So today weather, I will give. Second button, give today news. Third button gives you share market rates. Fourth button will give you the cricket updates, right? So it means this X server, like it is fetching the cricket news. It is fetching the shares news. Let's say it is fetching the weather information. Makes sense? So you have dedicated threads for this. Now, when you click on a button, so when you click on a button, there is a thread. There is a one thread which is behind the scene. We think about this is a thread which is called single thread. This is a single thread which is called event loop. So this is an event loop created by the JavaScript, and this is one of the intelligent thread. This is one of the intelligent thread. This says whenever you click on any button, I am actually observing. I am just observing you are clicking on a button. So think like it is like a watchman on your gate. So when somebody is enter from your gate or from your house gate, there is a watchman who is watching it, and it is asking to the watchman who you are, why you are going inside the house, right? Whom you want to meet. So these are the questions is asking by the watchman. So watchman is actually an observer. You will think like it is an observer which is actually observing. In this case, it is observing what? It is observing the events because you are actually doing some events on a page. I hope guys this makes sense. So it means there is a background thread which is always running. So that's why we are saying it's a loop. Loop means it is always running. And why it is called event? Because it is a loop on event. So it means it is just checking out, is there any event is happening? So we can say this is an infinite loop. I hope guys this is clear. So this is an infinite loop which is on a background it is running, and that is created by the JavaScript. So JavaScript engine, that is we are using V8. V8 internally have the thing called event loop, and this is internally running. That is internally as an infinite loop it is running. So whatever the click you will happen, so that is actually listened by whom? That is listened by the event loop, right? How the event loop is listening these button clicks? because there are some chances somebody is actually keep clicking on a buttons. For example, I click on one button, then immediately I click on a second, immediately I click on a third, immediately I click on a fourth. So the problem is, if the first button is going to be processed by the event loop, might be on that moment of time I will click second button. So that's why it maintains something called event queue. So behind the scene they have maintained something called event queue. So it means whenever you click on buttons, the button click is going inside the event queue. Make sense? So if anything is not clear, you need to raise your question. So the first observation is there is event loop behind the scene, which is actually listening your event. So we have created Greet app. So it means on a Greet app, when you are typing something on a text box, there is an event loop who is listening, who is actually watching you are typing it. When you click on a button, it is actually watching it. So it means in your code, you are actually writing what? You are writing the thing that is when you click on a button, the event is fire. So that event is fire. Who is going to listen that event is fire? It is listened by something called event loop, right? So Prapti, the point is there is an event loop which is a single threaded loop, right? So this is a single thread which is responsible to find out any event is happen on your page or not. That's why I'm saying it is like a watchman. It is actually observing any event is happen on your page. If it is, so all the events are captured inside the event queue. So it means whenever you click on a button, it will go in a queue. And when it is going in a queue, it is actually read by whom? Event loop. So event loop responsibility is to read this. So it is reading these events, right? So when it reads this event, then it will execute it. So it means in your Greet app, when you click on a button, it is actually that button is clicked. It is going inside an event queue, and event queue is read by the event loop, right? So that's why I'm using a word called single thread, because it's a one thread is talking to all the buttons. Now there is problem. I hope Prapti you understand this thing. Even what is event loop and what is event queue. So it is pretty much easiest thing. All the events when you click it, it will go in a event queue, and event loop is actually reading this event queue, right? So event loop is responsible to read this event queue, right? Now the problem start. The problem is if this buttons, think like this button is saying, give me the data from the server. This button says, give me the data from the server. For example, this is asking for the news. So news website is, let's say, hosted on a USA. It is hosted in a USA, and our application is running on this thing that is on a, let's say, on some India server. So it will take a lot of time to fetch the data. So it will taking a lot of time to fetch the data. So now the point, because when you click on this, event loop is reading this, and now it is fetching the data from some US server, and let's say it is taking 3 to 4 seconds to fetch the data. So it will hang the application. So it would not process the second one. It would not process the second one because it is only a one single thread. It is not multi-threaded. Make sense? So it is a one single thread. I hope guys this thing is clear. The problem is when you click on a button, it is fetching the data from the server, and because it is processed by the event loop, so event loop will be hanged because it will wait for 3 to 4 seconds to fetch the data, right? So if you compare this story, with a restaurant story, if you have the request, for example, this customer is asking for the pizza, right? And this pizza request is on a queue, and this is you can think like it is a waiter. So this event loop is like a waiter. It is actually listening it. It is actually listening it. So Vikas is asking the same thing. So event loop is, Vikas think like event loop is like a waiter, and event listener, waiter has the ear, right? So waiter is listening the events, right? So event loop is like a waiter, and the waiter job is to listen the event, right? All the events are happen on where? In event queue, because there are chances. For example, in a restaurant, 10 customers are asking for order, right? So it need to maintain a queue. For example, if you go to the McDonald's, in a McDonald's, there is a counter boy. That counter boy makes a queue of the customers, right? So if one customer is asking for, let's say, burger, so if second customer is coming up, so it has to be in a queue, right? And the third customer is coming, it is again on a queue. So it means that that counter boy who is on the counter is actually picking the first customer from a queue, then process it, then fetch the second customer, then fetch the third customer. So the bottom line is your counter boy is like an event loop, right? Because it is infinite, it always on a counter, and it is listening what? It is listening the customer queries. Make sense? I hope, Vikas, I answer your question. So event loop has something called listener who is listening the events. So whenever any event is happen, it will be go in a queue, and that event is listened by the event loop. And event loop, once it is listen the event, whenever it listen the event, it is start processing it, right? So when some pizza request is coming up, so the point is this request is handed over to event loop. It is handed over to the event loop. Now the problem is, if event loop is going to create a pizza, right? So it would not take another request because it is busy in the first thing. Make sense? So that's why it appoints some cooks behind the scene. It appoints some cooks because these cooks are used for heavy calculations, right? Because it is fetching the data from some servers. That's why they appoint some cooks. So these cooks are technically called web APIs, right? These technically called web APIs. So these are some background threads, which is a group of threads. We can say it's a group of threads. So we can use a word called thread pool. So behind the scene, this V8 maintains the thread pools. So whenever the request is coming, it is always handed over to this waiter. This waiter is event loop, and it is actually handed over to the thread pool, right? In thread pool, there are some background threads. When it assigned to this cook, it will get free. So this waiter is get free. So now it can take the second request. When it take the second request, it will hand it over to the second cook. Make sense? So it is again free. Now it will pick the third request, and it is again free. So if you just compare the same thing with the McDonald's, when you go to some McDonald's counter boy, you ask for a burger, it will pick the burger order, and it will say just wait, and I will hand it over your order to the kitchen, right? And the kitchen is the bunch of cooks there, and now it can take the second request, right? So Bhavya is asking thread pool is, you can think like these are the collection of some background threads who is doing the heavy calculations. Heavy calculations means these are talking to the server. So think like if you just go to the McDonald's and you give an order, an order boy is responsible to pick the order, and then it will go to the kitchen and it will prepare the burger, and then it will come back. So it would not take other requests. So you have large queue behind the scene. Makes sense? So what it is doing behind the scene, it is picking the order and hand it over to whom? It is handed over to the background threads. Background threads are like cooks in the kitchen, right? So that's why we are using a pool word, because you have some cooks, like let's say you have 5 cooks, you have 10 cooks. You do not have 1,000 of cooks for the 1,000 of requests. Makes sense? So that's why I'm using a word called thread pool. So these are the threads who is responsible to talk to some web API. It means it is responsible to talk to shares. These are responsible to talk to weather. They are responsible to talk to news. Make sense? So these are fetching the data from the server. Now, but the point to be understand, waiter is smart. Waiter make a request, and now it is free to take another request. That's why it is called asynchronous, right? That is the important point. That's why it is called asynchronous. It means it take a request, hand it over to the cook, I mean the background thread, and it is coming back, and now it is saying I will pick a second request, and the second request it will have handed over to the second waiter, right? I hope this is clear. And guys, when I answer the question, at least tell me, is this clear or not, right? So at least I have surety this thing, whatever I told you, is understandable, right? Makes sense. So Vikas is asking, do we need to explicitly define event loop? No, never. This is a part of the system, right? We are understanding what going on behind the scene. Makes sense? So when we talk about V8 is provided by whom? By the Chrome. Inside the Chrome, we have the event loop, right? So we are understanding what is going on behind the scene. It means when we are making an AJAX call, so it means we are fetching the server data, but our application is never hang. So why it is not hang? Because behind the scene, there is event loop is running on. And this event loop is created by the browser itself, right? So it's a responsibility of the browser. So these background threads are created by the browser. Make sense? So it means when you click on a button, so somebody is listening the button. So who is listening it? It is actually listening by, so who is listening it? It is listening by the event loop. Make sense? So it is listening by the event loop. I hope this thing is clear, because so these all things are part of the system internal architecture. So Abhishek, you're asking, thread pool is not made on the server side. We are talking on the JavaScript side. JavaScript make a thread pool, and these thread pool is basically talk to the server. These thread pool are talk to the server, and it is waiting for fetching the data. That's why I'm using a word called cook. So think like a cook is responsible to prepare a pizza. So it is taking time. So because the cook is dependent on several things to prepare a pizza. Same thing, these background threads are dependent on the server. So that's why these are on the wait state. But this waiter is never be on the wait state, right? So I'm going to compare these things with other technology. Then you will understand the what is the best part of the JavaScript. So what I'm trying to say is the final outcome I want to show. The final outcome is JavaScript is running under the hood. That is a V8, that is a Chrome engine, or Chakra, that is the created by Internet Explorer, or JS Loops. These are the name of the engines that I told you on the first day. So these are the engines which is created by different companies. Like V8 is by the Chrome, Microsoft create Chakra, JS Loops is created by the Safari, right? So these are the engines, right? Inside these engine, there is a common specification. That common specification is called, it has something called event loop, right? It is called event loop. So Ajax runs by default in background, absolutely, right? But Ajax is run by whom? That is the most important question. Ajax is run by whom? It is run by this event loop. So it means whenever any request of anything, I mean, if some request is coming based on some first button click, and this button says, I will pick some weather information. Another button says, I will pick some cricket information. Another button says, I will pick some news information. So when you click on these buttons is get clicked. Let's say weather is clicked, cricket is clicked, news is clicked. So one after another, it will, all of them is going inside something called event queue. I hope guys this is clear, right? So all the events will be go inside a queue. This queue is read by whom? It is read by the event loop. That's why I'm saying it is infinite loop. Make sense? So Bhavya, I just park your question right now, because when I compare with another technologies, you will understand why I'm saying this is a single thread. So we understand event loop is basically a one single thread. It is a one single thread. Make sense? Because this is a whole soul responsible for taking the request. So whatever button you have clicked, I assume these are the requests, right? So these requests are inside the queue, and this queue is read by whom? It is read by this event loop. And whenever some sort of request which is talking to the server, so we will say these kind of requests are called intensive requests. I use a word called, these are, I'll call intensive, right? So these are intensive requests which will take some time, which would not give you immediately output, right? Which would not give you immediately output. So the point is, behind the scene, the V8 or Chakra or JS Loops, they have the thing called web API behind the scene. So this is the internal architecture we are right now understanding. So these are having the web API, and web API has different threads. So they all have different threads, right? So these, whenever a weather request is coming, it is going inside a queue. It is read. So the first step is it is reading it, right? Or I can say first it will go in a queue, then it will read it. Once it is read, it is handed over. It is handed over to the web API. When it is handed over to the API, the event loop is get free. Now it will take the second request. So it will read the second request and hand it over to the second thread, right? So these all are the group of threads. That's why I'm using a thread pool word. So these are the responsible to talk to the backend. Make sense? So I just pick some questions. Nift is asking some. So one web page will have many API. Of course, if you just go to the Flipkart showing best selling products. Flipkart showing deal of the day, right? Flipkart showing recommendations. So it means they are actually fetching the multiple data from multiple APIs. Make sense? So that's why in a one web page you have multiple things. So if you just go on Facebook, you will see there are some live chat things is coming up. It means how many friends are live right now, and advertisement is coming up. Your post is coming up. Friend request is there. So it means there are multiple API calls behind us in a one single web page. If These all are the multiple API calls. So if these are on a synchronized manner, so it will hang the page. So think about if it is synchronized. So it is like a one request is we are processing. When the first request is get processed and render, then the second request will be handled. So it means the page loading time is much higher. Makes sense? So now I will pick the second. Single is asking it works sequentially when maintained in a queue, right? Because it is in a queue, so it means whenever any request is coming up, I mean when you click on any button, so any moment of time you will actually clicking on one button. So when you click on a first button, it will go in a queue. So it has the highest priority, then the second button, then the third button. So it maintain in a queue. So it will process one after another. So it is like event loop. Event loop is picking the first one and hand it over to this. It is handed over to this. Now it is get free. So it will pick the second button. Now it is handed over to this. So now it has become parallel. It has become parallel. I hope this is clear. Now it picking the third. So now third is also become a parallel. Makes sense? So I'm picking the Vikas question. Thread pool is multi-thread in this case, definitely. These are the background threads, right? But you never use a word JavaScript is a multi-threaded. I will explain this thing right later on. But first we are focused on the first thing, that is we are focused on the event loops stuff right now. Now I'm taking the Harish. Harish, will second request be checked after first request is served or just after handing the first request to API? So it means it is just Harish. It is handed over. Event loop is just handed over the request to the first thread. Now it is free, so it will pick the second one immediately. It does not care the first one is complete or not. Makes sense? That's why it is parallelism is behind the scene. So they are doing the parallelism through a single thread behind the scene. Now the point is, Suriti is asking, but ultimately requests are being executed one by one. But I think this thing is clear, Suriti, because I told it is picking it is reading from a queue, but it is handed over to the different APIs. So think like, for example, you go to some mall, and in a mall you are on a food court, and you are with some friends, and one of the friend is asking, just pick the pizza from the Domino's and just pick the burger from the McDonald's and some bucket from the KFC, right? So this is your responsibility to pick all these three. So you are acting like an event loop. You just go to the Domino's and say you are asking for a pizza. Domino's says pizza will be delivered within 20 minutes or 30 minutes of time. So you would not wait. You will go to McDonald's and asking for a burger. McDonald's said wait for 10 minutes. You would not wait. Then you go to a KFC and you are asking for a bucket. So the point is you are actually calling three things parallelly, right? You're not waiting for the result. That's why I'm saying through one event loop, you're doing the parallelism, right? I hope everyone understands this thing. Bhavya, I think you understand why it is called intensive tasks. Think about Domino's. If you're calling to a Domino's, it is doing some intensive task because it is making the pizza, right? So same thing, it is fetching the data from the server. So server is doing some intensive task, right? So Venkat is asking, Venkat has a very good question. Venkat is asking if thread 2 complete before thread 1, what event loop will do? Venkat, the thing is, think like you go to the Domino's and you ask for a pizza. Domino's said 30 minutes. And you go to the McDonald's, that's your second request, right? That is request for a thread 2. And you say McDonald's for a burger. McDonald's say I will give you now within 10 minutes. So obvious you will get a response from McDonald's as compared to a Domino's because it is taking less time, right? So it is more like you are asking the data from two different servers. One server taking 4 seconds, one server taking 2 seconds. And the 2 second server will give you a response. So whenever the response is coming, it would be a part of the queue. Makes sense? So your first result would be a part of the queue. Then the second result is coming, it is again a part of the queue. So for example, this is a thread 2 and this is a thread 1. Thread 2 give you a response, so it would be in a queue. Now the thread 1 is coming, so it would be a queue. So it means which one will we get processed first? The thread 1, the thread 2, right? That's a thread 2 because it is coming fast and thread 1 is coming slow. So it means whenever any response is coming, for example, if you're making 10 requests, any request is sorted out, so it will be part of a queue. I hope, guys, this thing is clear. I hope, Venkat, you understand this thing, how event loop is behaving and how it getting a response. So the bottom line is, guys, I hope everyone understand we are using a one single thread and it has a power to communicate to multiple parallel systems. Behind the scene, there is a thread pool. So we understand it is a lie. It is a lie. JavaScript using a single thread. because behind the scene there are some background things. But if I compare with some other things, then you will understand. If I am using a Java kind of stuff instead of JavaScript, or I am using some C# kind of stuff, right? Or if I'm using some Python kind of stuff, right? Or some other popular programming, right? So if any requests are coming up, right? So if request is coming on these systems, how these systems react? These systems are actually creating a new waiter on each request. That is the problem, right? So it means if you have 5 requests, 5 waiters. If you have 10 requests, 10 waiters. You have 100 requests, 100 waiters. Makes sense? That is a problem. So it means they are creating on each request, they are creating a new waiter. So think like they are creating a new thread on each request. So can we say per request, per thread, right? And then they are talking to some pools. So they are using the same concept. They have the pool funda, right? They have the pool funda and they are saying, I will hand it over to the cook. I will hand it over to the cook. So think like if you just go to some McDonald's and you're saying to a counter boy, give me a burger, and then counter boy go to the kitchen and it will wait with a cook. And when the cook prepare it, then it will come out and hand it over the burger to you. So now the problem is it would not take care of the second request. So you need to appoint a second waiter or second order boy. Makes sense? So that is a problem with all these systems. So it means you have the thread pool. So you assume like you have 10 threads behind the scene in a pool, and let's say you have 10 threads on top of it. So it means ultimately you have 10 plus 10 threads. But in case of JavaScript, you have only 1 thread here. So it means total you have 11 threads. Makes sense? I hope this thing is clear to everyone. What the advantage the JavaScript is providing to us. So it means it has the intelligent one. Instead of making on each request a thread, they are using something called a one event loop. And this event loop is very intelligent. It will pick the request. The point is it will pick the request, hand it over to the queue. And it would not be a sync. It is not a sync request. If it is a sync request, so the problem with these all systems are basically using a sync request. Makes sense? So it means whenever you make a request from this waiter is sync with the cook. It is sync with the cook. So it is get blocked. Makes sense? It is get blocked. So if the second request is coming, so the second waiter is talking to a second cook in case of Java, in case of C#, in case of Python. So it means now it is again blocked. So we need to appoint the third cook. Makes sense? That's why these kind of programming is suited for a server side. Okay. That's why it never be on a client side. Right, now I'm picking the questions. Nitesh is asking, is event loop only send request to pool or receive the request and handle it also? Definitely. It will actually, if we just go to the previous diagram, you will see event loop is picking the request, right? So it means whenever you click on any button, these requests go inside, right? When the response is coming, so it means you're fetching the data from a server, then the thread is giving a response. So that response is handed over to whom? To this queue, and this queue is read by this. So it means it is actually taking care of both of the part, right? So it means whatever the request is coming up. So I'm just repeating, Nitesh is asking. So whatever the request is coming up, so request is, it means whenever you click on a button, so it will go in a event queue. So that's why event queue is responsible to storing these events. So these are the events which is happen and it is go inside a queue, and event loop is reading this queue, right? And when it read this thing, so it is handed over to whom? It is handed over to the background threads. Background thread is talking to the server. So it is talking to a server. Server is doing their stuff. So it is actually waiting here, right? So this thread is waiting here. And whenever the result is coming up, so it actually put this result on event queue, right? It is put this result in an event queue, and event loop has the same responsibility. Event loop is reading the queue, right? So it is reading the queue. So it will fetch the response also. So think like it is handling this request events and it is handling the response stuff. I hope guys this thing is clear. So bottom line is it is actually reading the queue, right? So if we do not confuse on the request and response, we need to just understand whatever goes in a queue, it is read by the event loop. Make sense? I hope Nitesh, I answer your question. Nift is asking, when response come back, it is populated on the web page with refreshing of the page by default, right? That's a behavior without Ajax, right? So Nift, the answer is when you submit a page, then the new page is coming. We are not submitting the page. we are doing the AJAX call. So when we're doing the AJAX call, so we are actually fetching the JSON as a response. We're not fetching a page. So the page would not be getting refreshed. I hope I answered your question. So because you're asking event queue is a part of event loop or they are independent, event queue is independent thing because it's a whole architecture, because this architecture is interlinked, right? So you can think about V8 has this architecture. V8 has a lot of things, right? So it is, you can think like in your computer you have a motherboard, right? In a motherboard you can fit the hard disk, you can fit the CPUs, you can fit the RAM. So it means you can think like V8 is like a board, and board has this event loop, it has an event queue, it has a web API, right? All have the different responsibilities, but these all are fitted inside the V8, right? Who is responsible for the response? Response is actually taken care by the threads, right? So the thread is making the request, and whatever the response is coming up, it is going inside the event queue, right? And it is going in FIFO fashion, right? So it means whatever the response is coming first, it will go in a queue. So this thing is clear. Now I'm moving to the Bhargava question. It is a one-to-one thread in Java, right? So it means if we talk about in terms of Java or C# or any programming, it is actually doing this stuff per request per thread, right? And I already repeat the part with it is asking, can we say that event loop is only absolutely with it? Event loop is only responsible for request. Makes sense. So indirectly, if you put some wrong code, because this event loop is doing what? It is reading your events. Your events are attached with a function, and if your function is get failed, event loop is get failed. Makes sense. So it is the whole so responsible for this. So think like your restaurant has one waiter, and that waiter is smart. It talked to the cook, handed over the request to the cook, and now it is get free. But if your cook is become sick, your whole application, whole restaurant is stopped. Makes sense. I hope guys this thing is clear. I hope I answer every question. If any question is left, so you can raise. So this is very, very important, guys, because in interview no one is asking what is AJAX, because most of the time student just do the ratta. I mean, they just remember the code of AJAX. That's it, and they actually don't know how it is actually functioning. But if you know the functionality, then you will write, you will appropriately write the code. Bhavya asking, what will happen if two requests for a one response? Two requests for a one response? What does it mean? It means one request have one response. Makes sense. If two people is asking for two pizza, so two pizzas are coming up. Makes sense. So each request need a unique response. Makes sense. So when the request is going on, one response is coming. I hope Bhavya understand the point. Because whenever anything is stored in an event queue, right? Anything is stored in an event queue, it is actually processed by the event loop. Makes sense? So it means if the response is coming up here, so it is processed by whom? Event loop. So when it processes, so it means the process means it is attached with some function, right? So whenever the response is coming, so it is attached with the function. So the point to be remember is when this event loop is making a request, right, to this background thread. So this background thread is responsible to give a response. This background thread is responsible to give a response. So whatever the response is coming up, how this response is coming up, because this event loop says, I will hand it over my function to you, right? I handed over a function with you. Whenever you have a response, call my function. Remember this thing, call my function. So it means this function is stored in this event queue, right? It is stored in an event queue, and this event loop is reading this function and then firing up this function. So once it read it, it will fire it. Make sense? So think like, for example, you make a call to your friend, right? And your friend is, let's say it will come after 30 minutes at your home. So you will say, whenever you reach to my home, just call me back. Just call me back. It is same like I'm saying, this is my number, just call me back, right? So it means when I use this word, this is my number, call me back. So it is like, I don't want to wait. I am async. So whenever you have a response, then call me back. So it is same like event loop says, this is my function. when you have a response, just call this function, right? And put it in an event queue. And I am the event loop. I am responsible to read the function and I will fire it. I hope, Vikas, I answer your question. Right. So how the response is handled, this is the way. Can we have two event loops? No, I have only one event loop. But I am saying in JavaScript, we can do the multi-threading as well as, but using with the HTML5. So bottom line is JavaScript says I am a single thread because I have one event loop. But through HTML5, you can create multiple threads. But those are not event loop. Those are the threads, because event loop is a thread with a feature called reading from a queue, right? And talking to the web API. So it has the feature, right? So it has a feature for doing this. Make sense? So we have only one event loop. Now the point is, because asking then event loop have both request and response, right? Event loop can handle the request and can handle the response. Instead of remembering this thing, you can remember whatever is in the event queue, it is handled by the event loop. Venkat is asking what is web API? Think like Venkat, web API are some background threads which is used to do some heavier task. Heavier task is which is actually not giving the output immediately. Like you are doing A plus B, it will give the response immediately, right? Because it is performed by your CPU. But when you are saying, give me some weather information or give me some news of cricket, so it will talk to some server. And it means you are making a request to a server accept the request, process it, fetching the data from the database, convert it into the JSON, and then it will give a response. So that's why we need some background threads, which is actually waiting for a response. So it would not hang up our program because our event loop never be hang, because it handed over to some background threads. Background threads is doing some wait for a response. Whenever the response is coming up, it actually stored in event queue. I hope, Venkat, I answer your question. So web API is for doing some intensive task, right? So to do some background things. Makes sense. Okay, Nift is asking, we will have to write coding in JS to make all this, right? We have to write something, right? Now the point is, this is the architecture of your application, which is going behind the scene. Now you understand how the thing is going on behind, but we need to write some code, and that code is very, very less, but it does the magic behind the scene. That's why I explain this architecture. So the point to be remember guys right now is everyone understand what is event loop. So if somebody asks what is event loop, so event loop is an infinite loop, right? And it is a single thread, and it is responsible to read the event queue. It is read the event queue. Now what is the event queue? Any event is happen on your web page is stored in an event queue, right? In first in, first out manner. And this event queue is read by event loop. Now what is web API? To do the intensive task, the web API is there, right? And web API is a collection of thread pool, right? So this thing is clear, and I hope everyone understand what is the limitation of Java or C# or Python kind of systems. They are actually doing the multi-threading. So in this case, they have created a lot of threads, right? So that's why most of the companies using the Node.js, because Node.js using the same JavaScript architecture, right? That's why LinkedIn, which is actually created on the Java, is shifted to Node.js. That's why PayPal is shifted to the Node.js, right? So that's why a lot of bigger companies, Uber is shifted to this Node.js stuff. Netflix is using this. So it means a lot of bigger giants is shifted to the Node.js because they know the power of asynchronous. Because through asynchronous, they are actually not multiplying the threads. If they are not multiplying the threads, so hardware cost is very less. Make sense? So it means when you have a lot of read and write operation, remember, when you have a lot of read and write operation, this architecture, which we have learned, it is best, right? Because read and write are blocked operations. So we don't want to block the application. That's why we are using this. Make sense, guys? Now it is time to do a code. So we are starting with a code, and then we understand what is this asynchronous stuff. Make sense? So I am moving to the code element. So we start to writing a code from this thing, that is, we are writing the stuff in Chrome first of all. Then we understand. Then we are using it. So right now we are not talking about the Ajax. We are only talking about the asynchronous. Please note this thing. We are talking about the thing called asynchronous and how it is different from synchronous. Right now, the point to be understand to learn the Ajax, it only take 10 minutes to understand the Ajax, but this 10 minutes only work when you know the architecture. Then you understand, right? That's why we spend so much time to understand this architecture. Now I just move to this about blank thing, right? And I just go to the right click inspect, and I just want to show you how the asynchronous stuff work. Right now I'm still not saying Ajax. I'm talking only about the asynchronous. So for example, you have this kind of code, right? So this kind of code is entirely the sync code. So I'm writing the sync code here. Makes sense? Now I want to mix some code with async style. So for JavaScript, they have created a special method called set timeout. This set timeout is a special method which is working in an asynchronous fashion. It is working on an asynchronous fashion. So in set timeout, you will write a function. You will write a function like this. You're writing a function like this, right? So set timeout says, I will run this function. I will run this function. So this is a callback function. We already know we can pass a function with an argument. So we are passing set timeout is a function. We are passing a function inside it, right? So we are not giving a name. So this is an anonymous function, or you can say it's a function expression. We already know this thing. Now from here, I specify 5000. It means I am saying this function you are writing here, this will call after 5 seconds. So console.log, I will call after 5 seconds, right? Now, how the JavaScript will behave, we will see. Console.log, I'm writing here console.log, I am end, right? I'm writing I am end. Now the point is, what sort of line are synchronous and what sort of line are asynchronous? So this is a sync. So I'm writing this is a sync code because this line is run, then this line is run. And sync means blocked. Then this line is run, then this line is run. When you reach to this line, set timeout. This set timeout, because it is taking 5 seconds and it is a very intensive task because it takes 5 seconds. So it would not be get blocked. So this 5-second task is handed over to whom? It is handed over to the web API. So web API is responsible to run this after 5 seconds. Make sense? So there is a thread who is actually waiting for 5 seconds. So the point is when this code is running, it is actually done by whom? By event loop. So event loop is reading this code, right? It is reading this code. So when it is reading this code, so it is checking this is a synchronous code, so I will run. So if it is synchronous code, so I will run. So this code, this code, this code, this code, these all 4 lines are running by whom? By event loop, right? Prapti is asking 5000. I'm already told you it's a 5000 is basically 1000 is equal to 1 second. So this is a 1000 millisecond, right? So it is, that's why I'm using it is a 5 second. Video is lagging, guys. Just a minute. Just a minute. I'm just checking. Now the video is okay. The speed is okay. So I think Bharadwaj is not able to. So I think Bharadwaj, can you check it at your end because others are saying it is okay. Okay, everyone is saying. So I'm moving back to this code portion again. So what I'm saying is, when you're writing where a equals 10, where b equals to 20, and where c equals to a plus b, so all are the synchronous. So console.log till it's a synchronous line. When I'm writing set timeout is a predefined function, and it required a function. And I'm passing 5000. 5000 is the millisecond. So I told you 1 second is equals to 1000 milliseconds. So that's why I'm writing it. I will call after 5 seconds. So it will call after 5 seconds. So it means when event loop is reading this line, so when it is reading this line with the help of whom? With the help of event queue, right? So event queue has this set timeout. So it is reading from the event queue. When it is reading it, then it understands this is an intensive task. So it is handed over to whom? To web API. So it means when it is handed over to the web API, so now event loop is get free. So event loop immediately run this line. So now the point is the output is sum is, then I am end. Make sense? Sum is, IAM because event loop is free, so it immediately moved to this. So this code is not a block code, so it is a non-blocking one. Makes sense, guys? And that's why I'm using a word. It is a async code, right? Now the point to be remembered is because it's a async code, so it is handed over to Web API. Web API does what Web API says. Because I am a async code, so event loop is get free after 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, I will put this function. I will put this function inside this queue. And because the event loop is responsible to read this queue, so it will read this thing because this thing is already processed before 5 seconds. And after 5 seconds, the output is coming up. And the output is coming up, so it will process by this event loop. So it means after 5 seconds, you will get this output. Makes sense. But the point to be remember is your application is not hang. Makes sense. That is the beauty of this. It is not hang, right? So it means it is doing everything in a non-blocking manner. So it is event loop is smart. Event loop distinguish what is the block code. The block code I will run. Non-blocking code is handed over to the Web API. Makes sense, guys? This thing is clear. So let's run this stuff and then we will understand. So let's run this stuff. And if I'm running this code, you will see sum is 30, I am in, and after 5 seconds, you will see this thing. Make sense? I hope, guys, all of you are able to see, all of you are able to see this diagram in this code. So it means all of you are able to digest the stuff. It means when you are saying where a 10, where b equal to 10, 20, so all this stuff is handed over the event loop because there's a sync. When there is async stuff is coming up, we hand it over to the Web API. Web API says I will wait for a 5 seconds. When the result is coming up, I will hand it over to the event queue. Till now, the event loop is working on. That's why our code is never hang. So it means it is a non-blocking because of this event loop and event queue and with the Web API. Make sense, guys? So this is a newer kind of code. You would never learn this kind of coding because it's the first time you are learning this async, right? So JavaScript provide you the async stuff. I hope, guys, everyone understand this thing, and I am moving back to the code. If any problem in this code, so you can ask. And this is really important stuff. And this will help you on Node.js as well as on the React.js because Node.js borrow the same feature from this. So that's why you need to remember it. Nift is asking what to do when we want the program to wait for 5 seconds before proceeding to the next line. That is also possible. For this, we will learn some new API that is called await. So ECMA 8 process provide you something called await, right? So there are two answers I want to suggest. There are two things I want to suggest here. That is, the first thing in Nift, do not put this in set timeout if you want to run for a 5 seconds. So it means you will put inside some bigger loop which is consuming 5 seconds. So it will get hang up. Makes sense? Or otherwise you need to use a keyword called await. So we will learn the await later on. That is provided by ES6, right? Like we have learned ES 2020. We are also learning ES8. Abhishek is asking, can it be run with document.write also, sir, or we have to? You can use document.write even, right? So if you want to convert it with a document.write, it is also possible, right? So for example, instead of this thing, if I write document.write, so after 5 seconds, it will write it here. Makes sense? So it's all up to you. So sum is 30, I am in, and after 5 seconds, it will write the output in this. Right, so it is writing I am call after 5 seconds. Shreya is asking last line console.log and will called by this. Yes, Shreya. That is take care by the event loop because it's a sync code. So only the point you need to remember, the sync code is take care by the event loop and async code is take care by the Web API. Deepam is asking, can we explicitly make a block to run on Web API? That's what I'm doing. If you understand, the set timeout is required a function, right? And inside a function, you are writing a block of code, and that is handed over to the Web API, right? Make sense? So there are some APIs they have created to do this. Nift, I already told, Web API is basically the background threads, right? So this is a background threads in this diagram. So which is actually taking care those stuff which is async, like you're fetching the data from a server or you're doing the set timeout. So this set timeout stuff or your server callings is taken care by the Web API stuff. Make sense? So it means all the async stuff is taken care by the thing called Web API. All the sync stuff is taken care by the event loop. Make sense? So set timeout is async stuff. That's why it is on Web API. Shagun is saying my screen is not visible. I hope everyone is able to see my screen. Yes, Nift, Web API is a part of your browser. So it means I already told event loop, event queue, Web API, all are part of WOM V8, right? So do concentration, guys. I'm repeating the same stuff. Make sense? So these all are under the hood of your engine. So this is what we are seeing inside the engine. Make sense? So the most important thing to understand is you need to correlate this stuff. You need to correlate this stuff with your code. I mean, this stuff, V8, everything, you need to correlate this stuff with your code, right? It means whatever I am writing here is actually doing behind the scene. So if you correlate this stuff, then we are able to understand the things. Make sense? Any issues, guys? So if you understand this code, so I will move ahead because there are so many challenges we need to face. And this is the challenging part because this is the first time in your life you are understanding the async, right? Because if you're coming from C, C++, Java or C#, any programming, you're actually working on a sync style. You never work on an async style, right? So it's a mentality shiftment, right? Your think is get shifted to a new way of coding. Make sense? Okay. Now I am moving to the next problem here. What sort of challenges we are facing? For example, think about if I want this set timeout. It must be some part of the function. Let's say I'm creating a function and I'm saying I am async, right? And I just put this code, this portion of code inside this function. Make sense? And I want this function return the result to me. This function return the result. So this function result, I am the result of async. I am the result of async. Make sense? Make sense? Rashmi, it is not, we are setting the time, we are not making it synchronized, right? We are actually handed over to some background stuff, and background stuff is taking care of the things. Our code is actually running because it is saying I am end, right? So this I am end is coming up. Make sense? Make sense, guys? So guys, if the video is lagging and the voice is coming fine, so I can just slow down the things, right? Because might be some net issues here and there, might be some voice going in between. I mean, the voice must be the clear thing, so I can sing the stuff, right? Might be some moment of time the video would be lag because we are on the network. Might be some moment of time. I hope Rashmi, you understand. Our code is working on a async fashion. So where we are right now, I am saying I create a function called I am async, and I have the thing called set timeout, and in set time I have the function, right? And this function is supposed to return I am the result. Now the learning for all of you is because you have a async function which is actually giving the data after 5 seconds, right? It is giving the data after 5 seconds. So if you are calling it and you are expecting for a result, the result would not come, right? Because in a sync function, in a sync manner, if you have, let's say you have this kind of line, x equals to show, right? Most of the programming time you write this thing. So it means when you call a show function is supposed to return something. And this is only happen when you have sync code. Makes sense? Because this function is called and this variable is waiting for a result. But the problem with our code is it would not wait. So it means if you write this kind of if you are writing this kind of code, you're writing show. So show is become async because show is async, so it would not give a result X. So X is always become undefined. And the result will become after 5 seconds. Now the problem is if it is coming after 5 seconds, so if you have multiple lines after this X, so it will keep executing these lines. So it would not reach to this line. Makes sense. So what I'm trying to say is you never return on async. So return never work on async functions because async function will be called later on. So when it is supposed to return something, when it is supposed to return something, that return is after 5 seconds. So no one is waiting for the return, right? So that is the problem. So we will simulate this thing and we will understand. So I have this return statement. I am saying I am the result of the async, and I'm calling this function. This function will be called later on. So what I'm doing, I'm just copy pasting this code, this line of code. So I'm saying I have a var a10, var b20, var c equals to a plus b. And from here, I'm calling I am async. So I'm calling this function and I'm supposed to get a result in var x. Think about it. I'm supposed to get a result and I want to store it in x. Now the problem starts because when I'm calling this I am async, this is get called, but this line of statement would not run because it will wait for a 5 seconds. So immediately it will return what? It will return undefined because if your function is not returning anything, so it will give you undefined. So when you print console.x, console.log, and x is comma x. I hope guys this you're understanding this fine because it is the must-have feature which we are learning. So that's why you need to do some brainstorming. So what you have not understand, Nirosh, your video and audio not getting. I understand this thing. My video and audio is not. Okay, might be some internet issues, might be because everyone is facing the same thing because speed is something 30 to 33 Mbps I'm getting. I don't know.
So little bit lag is coming.
Okay, if the little bit is lag is coming, so what I will do, I will write the code and then I will explain. Right? Might be there are chances when I'm writing and I'm explaining it. So the code will be typed later on and my voice is coming first, right? So I will write and then I will, but I don't know why the lagging is coming up because my speed is good. So I just go back and I just repeat that stuff, right? So the point is, guys, when I create a function, I am async. This function has the set timeout stuff, right? And the set timeout stuff says this function will be called after 5 seconds. That is the point. And if I'm going to return the result, so this return result will become after 5 seconds. It would not come immediately. I hope this point is clear, right? That's why I'm just taking a clarification to everyone because the lagging is going on. So that's why I just want this thing. I hope everyone understand. I have the function which is called after 5 seconds. So it would not give the result immediately. It will give a result after 5 seconds. That is the problem, right? So it means if I am on this line, I am async. So if you just go to the calling line, right? If you just go to the calling line, which is says I am async, this line will be I called it, but it would not give a result. It would not give a result. So it will give what? It will give undefined. So X has undefined. Make sense? So X has undefined. So the point to be understand, guys, A equals to 10 is sync, right? B equals to 20, it is also sync. C equal to A plus B, it is also sync. Sum is C is sync. But problem is here, it is async. This is async. If it is async, so it will go here. It will go in function I am async, and it will end up this function as soon because this set timeout is handed over to whom? It is handed over to the web API. Web API says I will run this after 5 seconds. I will run this after 5 seconds. So the point to be remember is it will return what? It will return undefined. Makes sense? It will return undefined, and undefined is stored in X. This is the important point, guys. X contain what? Undefined. So the point is X is what? X is coming undefined. That is the problem. This is you understand. So if you understand this thing, so you will never do this kind of mistake. When I started my career, because I just got placed on college time, and I got placed in the last semester, and that moment of time I'm not very much familiar with the JavaScript, right? And JavaScript very new that moment of time. So usually my team is doing this kind of issues they have raised, because they are saying I call this function, but some moment of time the data is there, some moment of time data is not there, because it is async, right? So it is async. So developer not get the result immediately, and developers don't know how the async stuff is working. And why they don't know? Because they don't know the internal architecture. When I learn this internal architecture, then I understand the return statement never work on async stuff, right? So you need to remember this thing. The return statement never work with async style, right? So it means if you're trying to return it, you would not get the data, right? Makes sense? I hope this thing is clear. So Nitesh, that's why I'm not typing anything. I just write a code, and that's why I'm explaining it. So the code is still, because videos, if it is lagged, so video is saved. Makes sense? And now I'm speaking up, so you can map the things. Make sense? So the point is, return would not work. I hope this thing is understand, because the result is coming after 5 seconds. That is the issue. Make sense? That is the issue. And what we are getting X is undefined. So the first point to be clear is, guys, you never return it, right? So Venkat, I think Venkat is asking, is there built-in functions in JavaScript? Yes. Venkat, set time mode is built in. Console.log is built in. So I think Venkat is asking, can I return with some built-in function? I hope Venkat is asking this thing. So the point to be remember is, we are not going to return it. So how we can tackle out this thing? So Gautam is asking, despite of async, I mean, set time mode is one of them. Set interval is another function. Gautam, because we are in very early phase of the async, that's why I start with very easiest function. So if you just go to the intro sessions, they always ask this thing. Do you know the set time mode thing? Do you know how this is working internally? How this event do? How these things are working? Because I am right now going inside stuff, right? Once we understand the inside stuff, then we have the wrapper functions. Wrapper functions mean they have some built-in things, and we just call it, and everything is going behind the scene. That's why I'm saying, for understanding the Ajax, we only spend 10 minutes. But before 10 minutes, we are actually spending 2 hours to understand that 10-minute stuff. Makes sense? Because it's a pre-built thing. That's why I don't want to unjustify to all of you to directly understand the Ajax. So if once you learn this thing and you are asking to so many people, do you know the Ajax? They know the syntax. They don't know how internally it is working on. That's why we are more concentrated on this. That's why intro is more concentrated on how these async things are working on. So you would not do these kind of mistakes which usually developer does. So they are trying to return it. So now the problem we understand. Let's time to run this code, and we will see what sort of output is coming up. So I hope, guys, you know what is the output is coming up. First it print sum is, right? Then it will print X is, right? So X is coming what? Undefined. Then after this, it is saying I am the result of async. But this I am the result of async, it would not consume anywhere. So this result never be get printed, right? Because it never be consumed. Make sense? Because we are on the X is comma X. So it means this line is get executed and X has become undefined. So just to simulate this thing, this line is printed after 5 seconds. That's why I'm writing console.log. I am after 5 seconds going to return, right? Make sense? So if I run this stuff, so if I'm running this stuff, you will understand. So I'm running it. See the output. Sum is 30, X is undefined. So it is saying sum is 30, X is undefined. After 5 seconds, it is giving I'm after 5 seconds going to return. So the point to be clear, guys, It is returning after 5 seconds. No one is there to return it. Make sense? If you have any questions, so you can raise. So I hope you understand the problem. Right? Any doubts in your mind, guys? So I always recommend, guys, whatever the concept, whatever the hardest concept you will understand, always align the concept with some story, because our human mind always remember the stories, right? We always remember the story from our childhood, right? That's why I first align the concept with the restaurant story, right? To clearly say how the event loop, how the event queue, how the web API are working. So if you remember the restaurant story, and then you can align that story with event loop and event queue, so you always remember on your interview time, right? Right. Rupesh is correct. Rupesh is saying the X is undefined because it did not get the result immediately, because Rupesh, it is async, right? That's why. Makes sense? So it is same like you go to the Domino's, you are asking, give me the pizza. So it would not give. It will give after 30 minutes. Right. So what you will have? You have undefined pizza. Makes sense? So it is like this. Right. I hope this is clear. Abhishek is asking the thing. After X is undefined, why it is there another defined? It is return. Is it there for return statement? I think Abhishek is trying to ask, because I return it after 5 seconds, then the X's get updated. But the point is, X would not be get updated because X is not there, right? Because this line is get executed earlier, right? Makes sense, right? So we understand this thing with another story. So I hope most of them watch some old Bollywood movies. Old Bollywood movies is like Rajesh Khanna or Amitabh Bachchan's kind of movies, right? So 80s movies, if I am saying. In most of the 80s movies, there is some story. There is one hero and heroine, right? And this hero want to marry to the heroine, but this hero is poor guy and heroine is rich, right? So heroine dad is actually demanding to this poor guy, just make some money and then come back and then marry my girl, right? So there's a condition for a dad. Dad is asking, just make some money. So let's say make some 5 lakh of money, treat it like a 5 second, right? And come back and marry to my daughter. And I will give you time of 6 months, right? I give you a time of 6 months. So just interrelate the story. So this guy is going and making a money. So it is like a async. So it is making some money, but it will come back after 2 years. After 2 years. But this rich dad says after 6 months, I want a result. So it is more like a sync. Just give me a result after 6 months. But it gave a result after 2 years. So it is same like I want a result immediately, but it is giving a result after 5 seconds. So this dad marry this girl with some other guy because it would not wait. So the point is, this result is coming after 2 years. Now there is no one to accept the result. Same here. There is no one to accept the result because you want a result immediately, but the result is coming after 2 years. That is the point, right? I hope guys you understand this thing with this story. Why this X is not coming up? Because X is not there. Because this give a result after 5 seconds. So this line is already executed. It called it already, and it give undefined already. And if it is giving already undefined, so you print this thing, and after 5 seconds it is actually returning, and no one is here to accept the result. I hope guys all of you understand why I'm saying do not return it, because if you return it, no one is waiting for you for results. Same here, that girl is not waiting. Make sense? So if you interlink this thing with a Bollywood story, so we'll understand. They want a result immediately, but hero is giving a result after 2 years. So no one is there to accept the result. Makes sense? That because it's an async one. I hope I answer every question. Everyone understand, because some of them asking, Vikas is asking why this is undefined. Nitin is asking why do not we have an X. I hope Nitin, you understand this thing. and also the question is asking, I am after 5 seconds going to return. So I hope this thing is clear why it is coming undefined. So same question is asking by different peoples, and we all understand this data is coming up, but in a later stage of time, and no one is there to wait your data. Make sense? So this is how it is working, right? So it means we never return it. Now the point is how we can get the return value. To get a return value, there is a new approach. So the new approach says you will get the result. You will get the result if, because you don't know how much time it is taking, 5 seconds or might be sometime 7 seconds, might be 10 seconds. So your style of way is to get a result is, you will say, when I am calling I am async, I will bind my function with it. I will bind my function with it. So I will create a function. I will create a function called give me result. So this is my function. I just named it give me result just to clear understanding. So I create a give me result, and it contains the result. And it is saying console.log I am the result. Comma result. Make sense? So it has some result. Now I'm saying, this is the important point, guys. Now I'm saying this would not work because this is a sync style. I want in a async style. Async style says I am async and pass your function. In my function. It is like I'm saying after 5 seconds, call my function and give me the data. Make sense? I'm saying call my function and give me the data. So it is more like in a you just go to the Domino's and you're saying once the pizza is ready, give me a call. I will pick. Right? So it means just give me a call, I will pick. Make sense? So it's same like I am async, this is my function. I know this is an async function, it will done everything after 5 seconds. So I handed over my function. So I'm not calling it. Remember this point, I am not calling it. I'm just passing it. If I call it, it is a bracket. I'm not calling it, it is without a bracket. Make sense, guys? So this function is handed over. To whom? It is handed over to I am async. So I am writing fn. I'm writing here fn. So it means what I am receiving, receiving fn, right? So fn is become what? It has become a function. Make sense? So the point to be remember is, guys, we never going to return it. So return is illegal. Think like return is illegal. So what I am doing is, Praptik, please concentrate on this. Give me result is a function. And this function I am passing on I am async. So I am async is my function. Here I am passing give me result. So give me result is a function which is handed over to this function, right? And I'm saying I am async. You are responsible to call my function that is give me results. So I'm just saying it is more like I'm saying my friend is reached to some location. And I'm telling to my friend, when you are reached to this particular location, then call me back. So it is same like when you done 5 seconds, then call my function back. That's why there is a term called callback in JavaScript. There is a term called callback. Make sense? I hope everyone understand this thing. Callback. So it means you're saying you are async function. You just take my function, and when you reach to the 5 seconds, then call me back. That's why there is a term called callback function, right? So I'm passing a function and hand it over to the fn, and it is saying callback function, right? So fn is a callback one. So what you not understand, Yogesh, please elaborate. Callback, you not understand? So think like callback is like Yogesh is meeting to Amit, suppose, right? And Yogesh is saying, Amit reached to, let's say, CP, Connaught Place, right? So Yogesh is waiting there. Yogesh saying, Amit, once you reach to the Connaught Place, then call me back. So Yogesh is handed over a function. Think like your phone number is like a function for me. So you handed over a function to me, and let's say you are handed over a function 30 minutes before. And you're saying, when you reach to the CP, then call me back. So you are actually doing what? You are passing your function to me because I am an async. So you don't want to wait for me for a 30 minutes. You're saying once you reach, then call me back, right? So that's why I attach a function. So this is a callback function, which is I attach with the I am async. So this function is get attach. and this function is called after 5 seconds. So I'm going to write how to call it. Make sense? So Bhavya is asking, can we return now? Yes, we can return, but in a our style, right? Not in a sync style. We are returning in our style, right? So we are not writing a return statement, but we are returning it. Make sense? I hope guys, everyone understand the callback. So callback is always come in the picture when you have the async stuff. So async stuff says when something is going after 5 seconds or 10 seconds, so you will attach your function and your function will be called. Make sense? So it is same like when you go to some restaurant, like you are going to some Haldiram and Haldiram creates some recipe, and then the waiters or who have created this thing like dosa or some any product they have created. So this just call you back, sir, your product is ready. Makes sense? So it is they are just calling you, right? So they are calling back you. Makes sense? So same point is here. We are actually saying this give me result is handed over to the FN, right? So this is handed over to the FN. Once it is handed over to the FN, now the point to be remember is this function we have, and instead of writing this return statement, we are writing this statement FN, I am the result of async. Make sense? So what I'm doing, I am calling the callback. So I'm writing here, I am calling the callback. Make sense? So if you just see this line, this is a whole so important line. So this is a replacement of the return statement. Make sense? So Chetan, you can think about async function. I am calling it. I am handed over my function that is give me result. Give me result. So give me result is become FN. Give me result is become FN, and FN is called after 5 seconds. So if you just see, all of you see this highlighted line. So it means I am calling this function, but after 5 seconds. So it means I am calling whom? I am actually calling give me result. And this result contain what? This result contain all this statement. So this line of statement is handed over to this, and I am getting a result. So this is the alternative of the return statement. So you're doing a return, but in your style, in your JavaScript style. But now we can call a function directly without callback, but you would not get a result. That is the problem we are facing. If you just go back 10 minutes back, 15 minutes back, the issue what we are facing is we are returning the thing, but we are never getting the return statement because it is an async. That's why the solution is we pass our function, and we are saying when you reach to the 5 second, just call my function back. I hope Pranav, I answer your question. Why we attach the callback? This is the important thing. Any other question, guys? So if you have any sort of doubt, you have to clear. You have to be blunt, right? You have to be clear everything, because this is a point of your bread and butter, because whatever you are learning, this is not a part of your college curriculum. This is not part of your degree. This is a part of your skill set. You're making a skill set. So when you're going to some interview discussion, or you're going for some internship, they are actually asking this thing. And believe me, the development is not easiest thing. That's why the concepts are hardest, right? That's why there are a lot of questions are coming up. That's why it is not easily going in your mind, because it's the hardest thing. That's why the developer is getting the very good payments, right? That's why your salary would be a 50K or 1 lakh in very easier manner. If you compare with other professions, why the developers are getting more salaries, because they have a very good brain to understand everything, right? So that's why you need to take this pain. So Abhishek is asking, please execute the code. I am just executing. I just want to get a confirmation. Is everything understand this stuff? Then I will execute it. Right. So I hope I hope I clear every doubt. So if we predict, now the point is, before executing, if I try to predict the output, and if your output is match with the real output, so actually you understand the concept. Makes sense? So if you predict the output, if you just go with the behavior, the A equal to 10 is a sync line, right guys? B equal to 20 is a sync line. C equal to A plus B is a sync line. Console.log sum is a sync line, right? So the first output is sum is. First output is sum is. Now the point is I am async will work, right? I am async will work. Makes sense? When this I am async will work, I am passing give me result. X is no more. We do not have the X. Makes sense? We do not have the X, so it will give an error. So I will say if I am trying to write this line, this is illegal one, right? Where X equal to I am async, it's an illegal. But if I'm trying to write this line, X is get defined, but get X values undefined. Make sense? So I don't want to confuse you. That's why I'm not putting this line, and I'm saying last line. I'm writing last line, right? So the point is now there is no need of X because it's not a sync code. Makes sense? The X is coming instead of the X, we have the result variable. The result is coming in the result variable. So the first point to be noted is console.log is the first output. Console.log is the first output. And now you move to this code. So I just clear the stuff first of all. So I'm writing first line console.log is running. Then I am async is running. So it will go to this portion of the code, but it will wait for 5 seconds. Because it wait for 5 seconds, it will be reach here. It will be reach here. Console.log last line. Right. So last line is coming up. Sarthak is saying voice is breaking. Is it? Okay.
No, sir, it's okay.
Okay. Sarthak, can you please check at your end because everyone is able to hear my voice? So guys, the first line is console.log sum is C, that is here, and now I am async is working and it will reach here. So the second line is here. It is going here, but it will wait for 5 seconds. So it will immediately go to this line. So the last line is coming up. So it means the first output is this, then the second output is this. After 5 seconds, what will happen? After 5 seconds, this line is printing. And now it is calling this function. Now you have the result. Now this is like a return statement. Now you have the result and now you're printing this result. So it means now you at least get a result. Earlier you are not getting a result. So you are getting a result. So now the point to be remember, guys, return statement is replaced by a callback function. This is important. So this is the crux. Of this. Now the return statement is no more work. Return statement is only work for the synchronized code. Remember this point. This is the juice of this 2-hour discussion. So it means return statement is only work with the sync statements. For async statement, we need a callback functions. That's where we are passing our function, and this function will be called after 5 seconds. So the output is first it prints sum is, then it print last line. Then after 5 seconds, it is printing I am after 5 seconds, and it will print I am the result because the callback function will work. Makes sense, guys? I hope everyone understand this concept. So I am just running this code and we will see the output. So I am running it. You will see sum is 30 last line, and after 5 seconds, it is showing this. Make sense? Now you have the result, and you get the result only through a callback. Makes sense? Vikas is asking inside the asynchronous. Yes, of course, in asynchronous you can write synchronized code. In asynchronous you can write asynchronous code as well. It's all up to your choice. So the point, the crux is basically when you have some bigger task, I'm always recommending make it asynchronous, because asynchronous task is handed over to the web API. So your small task will be run first, and then after 5 seconds, your bigger task will be run. Make sense, guys? I hope everyone understand this thing. Bharadwaj is asking in C++ we also have callback function. No. In C++ we have the only synchronized coding. So synchronization is working behind the scene. Multi-threading is there, but I hope no one learns C++ with the multi-threading features, because it is something. If you learn C++ multi-threading stuff or C multi-threading stuff, you need to go very, very deep in a C. So in college curriculum, we are actually learning the C and C++ according to the application development side, not for the system development side, right? But the bottom line is in C++, if you just go to the library side, they have some async stuff, but not in what you have learned, right? I hope you understand my point, because anyhow, operating system is also doing the async stuff, and operating system are mostly created on C and C++ style. So if they have the async stuff, so they are actually doing with the C++. But I am just suggesting you do not go on this side, because this is more on the system development side. You are learning everything on a application development side. Make sense? So Ayush is asking something, as we have done before, we're storing the string into X variable. How can we store? Ayush, please understand this thing. That is a sync style, right? It is an async style. Do not mix these things. This is actually saying, I'm just connecting this stuff. You are getting a result in a sync style when you're returning something, but async never return it. The problem is it is calling after 5 seconds. That is the most important thing, right? So that's why the answer is to do the same stuff. The answer is you have the feature called callbacks. This is you need to understand. You get doing the same stuff, but a callback fashion. That is the difference between a synchronous coding and asynchronous coding. Makes sense? So your question is more like in C language, you want to use classes, right? So that's not a feature of C language. Same here. That's not a feature of sync. Makes sense? But I hope you understand how the async stuff is working. That is much more important stuff, right? So I am just, because we are just touching it, right? We are just touching it. We will spend some more time to understand more async stuff, because for understanding this stuff, we are actually consuming some time. So we are behind the time, because we need to understand more stuff to understand the Ajax. So I'm just moving to one more thing, that is whatever the code we are writing here right now in this function, that is a success code. Think about if your async is unsuccessful. It is more like you go to the Domino's and you're saying, I want a pizza, but Domino's is not able to deliver the pizza. So the happy scenario is always give a pizza. That is a success result. If it is not able to deliver the pizza because of so and so problem in a kitchen, might be the microwave oven is not working, might be the inventory or stock is out of stock, might be there are some chances, right? So we, as a developer, we need to write some code for failure condition also. Now the challenge is, for failure condition, what we need to specify, we need to specify something called function and fail function. Make sense? So this fail function is responsible to grab the error if some error is coming. Make sense? Chetan, if you understand this thing, we are actually doing the async stuff, right? Because when I'm talking the Ajax stuff, Ajax has predefined stuff. Ajax has predefined stuff. It means it has predefined function called fetch. You will just write fetch, call it, it will give a result, and you don't know what is going on behind the scene, right? To understand what is going on behind the scene, I create an illusion of async by using set timeout. So set timeout give you the illusion how the async will working. That's why you're able to see what is going on inside. That's why I'm saying, if I tell you the Ajax feature that is called fetch function and fetch internally doing all of this stuff, so you never learn internal stuff, right? I hope you understand why we use a set timeout to understand these things, because set timeout give you a 5-second thing. This after 5 seconds your code is running and you get a response, and then you're saying the result is coming, is successful, so you're calling fn. If it is not successful, it is giving a failure. Makes sense? I hope Chetan you understand why it is necessary to write set timeout, because you are a beginner and you understand how the async is working on. Otherwise you cannot see the async feature, because async want something will happen after 5 seconds, not immediately, because whatever the code a, b, c equals to a plus b, these all are the same features. Make sense? So Bharadwaj is saying it is like exception handling. Yes. So we are doing exception handling stuff. Now the problem is, this is another learning, guys. If you use try catch, if you heard about the try catch stuff on any programming, that is for the exception handling. You write some code. If any line has some exception, it will go to the catch statement. If any line has a problem, then it will go to the catch statement. This is only true for the sync code. Makes sense? It is only true for the sync code, but for async it is not true, because if you calling a function, let's say you're calling a function, this function says I will give a data after 10 seconds. So exception will become after 10 seconds. So your try will be end up still you do not have any exception. Make sense? So this is another interview question. Can you use try catch in async code? You cannot. The answer is you cannot, because try catch is only for the sync code. Make sense? Because async code will give an exception after 10 seconds or after 5 seconds, and your try will be get exhausted that moment of time, because it would not wait, because event loop is keep running. So you never use try catch. So you need to remember, you never use try catch in case of async, right? In case of sync it is required. In case of sync it is required. In case of async there is an answer called error callback. You need to create error callback for this. Make sense? I hope Bharadwaj is understand this thing. This is an alternative exception handling and why we are not using try catch. Single is saying give result function pass to async function. Yes, it is. Having function how fn pass to result argument. How fn pass to result argument? This is absolutely clear thing. Just try to understand. Just focus on the code. Fn is what? Fn is give me result, right? Fn is what? It is give me result. So I just show you the entire code, then you will understand. This is the whole soul code, right? So I am here. This is the whole soul code. And just read this thing, guys. I am saying I am async, give me result. So I hope single you understand this thing. Give me result has become fn because it's just a this is just a variable and it is copied to this fn, right? So fn is pointing to give me result. Makes sense? And set timeout is running after 5 seconds. It is calling fn. So fn is what? Fn is give me result. Remember this thing. Fn is what? It is a give me result, right? So give me result is a function which is assigned to fn. So it is more like where x equal to 10. So 10 is like a give me result and it is assigned to fn. So it means that it is assigned like it is assigned in x, right? So fn is calling, right? Fn is calling when give me result is calling, and I am the result of async. It's a value, and this value is handed over to the result. I hope single you understand this thing. So it means you are passing a parameter value and it is handed over to the result, and it is handed over when? After 5 seconds. So that's why I'm saying this is an alternative way of return statement. Make sense? So I hope guys, you all of you understand how much this thing is get important, because it is a different mindset thing which we are learning here. That's why it is taking time to understand. Any doubts, any queries? Because I want when we end up the session, all of you have absolute clarity of this thing, right? So the concept clarity is must, right? Code practicing is all depends on yours. It means whatever the code I'm writing, all is, I mean the code syntax you always remember when you're writing it multiple times, right? So there are two things to be understand. The first thing, the concept. If the concept is clear, the code is automatically get understandable. And when you are able to write the code, when you are keep practicing it, right? That's why the first thing is the concept thing. All right. So I am moving to the next thing. So Bharadwaj is saying to learn JavaScript, we have to forget previous learned programming. Yes, absolutely. Just vanish C, C++, Java, rest of the stuff, because they are different and JavaScript is entirely different. Right. Yes, Senchandra is saying practice only clear the things. Absolutely. I am just when I am giving the training is just a guidance, right? Training cannot copy paste the things in your mind, right? And I do not have any medicine to just give you and you will learn the things. It's all about the practice, right? So when you do the practice, then the whole thing is understandable. Training is most concentration on the guidance, right? So the outcome of the training is I clearly understand the concepts. My concepts are clear, right? That is the main objective. When the concept is clear, then you're able to write the code, right? So if you can copy paste the code, you will understand it. Makes sense? Because when I'm totally entirely engaged in the development, my seniors are saying you developers are doing only the copy paste because there is Google Baba, right? You can search everything from the Google, and Google is give you some snippets, right? And you can copy paste it and you can run it. So seniors are saying you developers are doing the copy paste only, but the copy paste, what is has to be copy and what has to be paste, you need to put your brain, right? Make sense? Is it clear? Shrishti is asking, sir, now we'll continue to definitely. I just going to wind up in some logic line. Just wait for 5 minutes. I'm just going to wind up. Right. So the last point, because last point is pending, guys. Because once we wind up this thing, so last point is pending. That the thing I'm trying to say is try catch cannot be used because it's an async code. So you need to specify the failure thing also. So the failure is a callback. Again, it's a callback, right? Console.log, I am fail error. Makes sense. And I am printing what? I am printing error. So if some error has occurred, might be some error has occurred. So think about it. If error has occurred, so I'm saying there are chances of error. I just want to create an illusion of it. So let's say I have 10, and I'm saying I am calling this function only this condition if a is greater than 10. So I call this. So this is a success case. Let's say this is a success case. Else, oops, I just press enter. That's why it is giving an error. So in else case, I am writing there is an error. If it is an error, so I will say there is another thing, that is a failure. So I will say F, and I'm saying F, and I'm saying some error occurred. Make sense? So I'm just showing you, you can have two callbacks now. First one is for the success, another is for the failure. First is for the success, another is for failure. So Fn, instead of Fn, I will write success, and here I am write fail. Makes sense? Just to make the things very clear. That's why I'm writing this thing. So here I just specify success. Success is basically a successful condition here. It means this is a callback when everything is successful. And if anything is get fail, I will call the failure condition. So this is the alternative of using the try catch. So instead of using a try catch, you can use a success and failure callbacks. Make sense, guys? Is it clear? So this is an alternative, guys. So the point is, at one moment of time, a one function will be called. At one moment of time, a one function will be called. So I just picking the question. Abhishek is saying for developer, what is must, async or sync? Both. My answer is both. Both is needed, right? But for heavy tasks, for intensive tasks, always preferred async. Makes sense? If you're reading a file, if you're reading a database, because these are time-taking tasks. So always recommend async things. Rupesh is asking, with this callback function after 2 years, Hero is now rich, and we get to know that without the presence of you can think like this. It means it is a failure case. So Rupesh is trying to match up with the story. It means when there is some failure case, it means you can think like the hero is not able to generate a money after 2 years and it is get failed. So we will raise a failure case, right? So that's why the failure callback is. So the sequence is more same, right? The sequence would not be get changed. The sequence is same. The only point is if the success is there, it means at a one moment of time, one function will be called. So we can think like there is something called event loop. Event loop is there. Event queue is there. Make sense? When you're making a call to I am async, you're making a call to I am async. I am async is part of this. And when I am async is running, it will find out there is set timeout. It will find out there is something called set timeout. When there is set timeout, it will wait for 5 seconds. Where it will wait? It will wait for in web API. Makes sense? It will wait in a web API. After wait, if it will go for this condition, if a is greater than 10, so it will go this. It will go in a success. Otherwise, it will go in a fail. Makes sense? So in this case, it will go in a fail. So the fail would be a part of queue. Because after 5 seconds, it is calling fail. So fail is a part of queue. Event loop reads the fail. And in the fail, it will pass some error occurred. So it is similar like success. So it will go here. An error will be here. And it's saying I am fail error. And it will show the description of an error. I hope, guys, this thing is absolutely clear. Because it is the same thing which I did for a success, I did for a failure. Only I just change in a condition. So it means I am just suggesting you do not use try catch, use always the callback function. So you need to prepare two functions most of the time, success function and the failure function. Either the success will call, either the fail will call, but all of them will be called after 5 seconds. And point to be remember, do not return it. Return only can happen when you have the sync, and callback is only happen when you have async. Make sense? Is this clear, guys? I hope Nipun, you understand this thing because you are asking for event loop and queue thing. Make sense? Kaushal is sending some code. Kaushal is trying to doing some recursive calling, right? But it is async, right? So it never return it. Make sense? So it is infinite. So it means it is keep calling after 4 seconds. Because you are inside a function, I think, or you are outside. Okay, Nipun is saying push the chart on Git. I will. First of all, guys, I just want to take a confirmation. I hope you all understand this code. And Kaushal is asking for I am async will give something. It would not, because Kaushal, it's an async function. It never give you a return statement that I already told you. That's why we learn callback. So guys, this point you never be forget this point, because we are going to use this point in server calling. So we are going to use this point in a server calling. Instead of this 5 second time, we will call a server. So behind the scene, this all the code will be taken care by the JavaScript. We are just writing our callbacks. We are only writing the callbacks. It means we are calling something and we're passing the callbacks. It means we're calling a server. We are saying whatever the result you will give, either it is success or either it is fail. Just call my success or call my fail. Make sense? So that's why they wrapped everything. They just hide everything. They hide the complexity. But we understand how the complex thing is working. Make sense, guys? So I'm going to wind up this thing and I'm going to share this code to everyone. At 2 o'clock, you have very easy session, that is HTML. Enjoy that session, learn the things. And tomorrow also you have the easier session, that is a CSS. So 2 days is very relaxed session, but it is highly important to all of you, because in HTML, no coding, CSS, no coding. Because it's a declarative style, it means you need to do ratta. You need to remember everything. This tag is for this tag is for this, right? And you have the VS Code. VS Code has emit, so you can use this thing. So when you have the light days, it means you have 2 light days. So, but you need to remember this complex thing for a next class, right? And believe me, guys, the things are going very, very complex, and do not fear of the complex thing, because complex things give the opportunity, right? When you know the complexity, you have the opportunity to get the higher package. Remember this thing. So if you're dreaming for a good package, you're dreaming for a good company, always learn those things which is not very, very easy things. If everything is easy, so there is a huge competition. And when there is a huge competition, so there are number of people for a job and the package is less. Always remember this thing. Thank you, Naresh, for compliments. So to submit the assignment, I think Parul ma'am team can handle to picking the assignment. Then they hand it over to.
Yes, sir. Sir, we can deal with the picking of assignments. You can ask if students are having any doubts in the assignments. They can discuss it now.
Okay. So guys, any doubts?
Regarding assignments or the previous part or this part, so they can discuss their doubts now.
So Abhishek is asking what sort of the difficult parts we will see. We will see some parts in, like when we are moving to the Ajax thing, we are on a difficult parts, because right now we are just run this. I mean, we understand the async stuff, and in Ajax there are some challenges, because we are going to learn something called promises, because callback has some limitations. So we will learn promises stuff. We will learn component stuff, which is very challenging in React, because it's again a new thing which you never learn. And we learn in a Node.js everything is async, right? So most of the thing is async. So those parts that are the new concepts which you never heard in any programming. So it's a new mindset will be going to be start. Makes sense. That's why I'm using this would be a difficult part because it's a newer mindset. So for a JavaScript practice, I will give you assignments on daily basis. So you work on the assignments. That would be better for practicing because JavaScript is not like you go for a lead code and you will do some coding, because lead code, if you go or HackerRank or Hacker, it is more on the algorithm side, right? We are more on the application side. So that's a huge difference between when you learn the data structure and algorithm. There are sort of website, there are sort of questions are given there, and in data structure and algorithm we more concentrate on the resultant part. We never concentrate on the architectural part. So there is a difference between when you learn the DS and algo stuff, you are more on the logic side. That's why there are a lot of practice websites there. But for JavaScript part, you need to just clone the application. I hope Harshit you understand. That's why there is no practice website for this. If you go for a practice website, there is most on the algorithms part, right? So, but we are most concentrated on an application design part, right? So our concentration is to design tic-tac-toe or a calculator, these kind of application. That's why we are moving on this side, right? So I hope you understand. So that's why only the assignment will work on this stage. So I will give the assignments, you will work on the assignments, right? So now the thing is, I'm picking up the question. So Abhishek is asking. So that's right now I'm starting the doubt session. So you can ask your questions. I just picked the first question, that is Abhishek. Abhishek asking, can you help with the logic of tic-tac-toe? Sure. So I just tell you what is the logic of this. So to understand the logic here of tic-tac-toe. So guys, the first absolute thing is you need to first of all, you need to create 9 buttons, right, on your HTML. Make sense? And on 9 buttons, you need to attach an event by using add event listener, right? So I'm just telling the logic. The logic is pretty much easy. You need to just create 9 buttons. So I'm assuming we have 9 buttons, right? And when you click on a first button, so you need to figure out which button you have clicked. How you will get an answer? You will get an answer by using the word called this. So whenever you click on a button, so button at the end is an object. And when you click on a button, you will get a this. This always point to the current object. So when you define add event listener, try to print console.log and print this inside it. So this will give you the first object reference. It will give you the first object reference. So it means if you click on a second button, that this will point to this second button. I hope this thing is clear, guys. So this is a pointer which is actually giving a reference of a current button. Makes sense? So now you have a current button reference. So if you write this dot inner text, you will identify either you put X or either you put 0. Make sense? So printing of X and 0 is totally rely on a flag variable. So you need to use a flag variable. So these all hint I am giving, right? Even I can share the code, but there is no value. If I share a code and you just look up the code and you understand the code, so your brainstorming is 0, right? So that's why I just first give you the hints, try these hints and try to create yourself. Once this thing is clear, then I will share the code. Then you can compare the code, right? Then you compare the quality of the code only. Now the point is you maintain a flag. This flag says if this is a true, print X. If the flag is false, print 0. Make sense? So you need to maintain a flag in this code, and this flag is responsible to print X or 0. Now the point is where you print X or 0, the answer is this. Remember this thing. The answer is this. That tell you on which button you will click. So you are clicking on the second button or third button, or either the X is print or 0 is print. It is telling by the flag. So when you print X, let's say your flag is true. Your flag is true and you're printing X, right? Your flag is true, you are printing X. Now the point is when you print X, after this, you just complement the flag. You complement the flag. So now your flag is reached to the false. Your flag is reached to the false. And when you click on the next button, your flag is false. So it will going to print 0. When it print 0, again complement it. When you complement it, it has become true. Make sense? So if it is true, so third button, when you click, it is an X, right? And then you complement it again. Now, when you click on any button, it will print 0. Make sense? I hope, guys, this thing is clear to everyone, how the printing is happen, right? So I hope Abhishek is clear and Sen Chandra is clear about how this x and 0 is printing up by using a flag and by using this dot in a text. So this is the hint. Now the point is, because x and 0, all of them are printed, and you have all the button x's. You have all the button x's, right? So you can traverse all the buttons and find it out. Is this row of buttons? So this is a button 1, this is button 2, this is button 3. All these buttons having x. If all having x, so print x as winner. If all having zeros, so print 0. I mean, you need to traverse all the rows. You need to traverse all the columns. So 3 rows traverse, 3 columns traverse, and diagonal traverse. Make sense? So Ritik is asking what I need to repeat, Ritik. Flag fundamental. Flag thing, you not understand? Or this thing? So flag, Ritik, flag is basically when you have this calculator, when you press first time the button, whether it is printing x or 0, it is decided by the flag. So flag contain true by default. If it is true, so we are going to print x, right? And then we complement a flag. Complement means if it is flag true, so turn it false. That is called complement. So there is a negation operator, if you know. There is not, and not is basically doing the complement. So it is doing the complement, so it is become false. And if it is become false, then if you print 0, if you print 0 here, how it is print 0? Because it's false. So you have a condition. If it is true, print x. If it is false, print 0. And once it is false, then again complement it. If you complement it, false has become true. So when it has become true, and if you click on any button, so it is going to print x because it's true. Then you complement it again, so it has become false. Then you press on any place, then it prints 0. I hope, Ritik, you understand this thing, how the flag is working. Right? And I hope, guys, this is also you understand. When you want to check everything, you need to traverse the rows, right? So make a one single function. So if you just figure out this thing, this row, and this row, and this row, you need to write only one function and call it thrice. You need to just call it thrice. So it means you create a one function for checking on a row, and same it here. For column, you create a one function, call it thrice. And for diagonal, you need a one function and call it twice. So at the end, you need to create 3 functions. One function row checking, one function column checking, one function diagonal checking. And it is called thrice, twice. I hope, guys, this is clear. So this is the whole logic of tic-tac-toe. So I tell you the logic, try to implement this, right? And once you implement it, so in next class, I will tell you how to launch this on a Git. Right. Now the point is, Pranav is asking, can you give a tip of evaluating string of calculator? Okay, so the point is, it is pretty much easy thing. So I just open a new page. So the point is, when you're creating a calculator, so you need to create a lot of buttons, and on a button click, like let's say 9, 8, 7. So you need to, when you click on this button, you need to print it on this box area. Either it is a label or either it is a text field, right? So you need to print 9 here. And when you print 8, so you need to concat it. Remember this thing, you need to concat it. So because text box contains string, so when you use plus operator, it automatically does concatenation, right? Now the point is to evaluate, because when you type 98, then you press minus, then you press 66, and then you press equal to. When you do this equal to, the trick is you need to use, so the trick is, I just open a new page. So the outcome is Pranav. So I just run it again. So the outcome is you need to use some variable to store the expression, right? So I think this code is fail is a function. I am after 5 seconds. I think I have not passed a fail. I just check this out. Why this is not working? Function fail is there. Function fail is there. And here I am not passing there, right? So the only point to be remember is because I call it here and I need to pass fail. Makes sense? And when I run it, it will work. So the point is I'm coming back how you can evaluate the final calculation. To final calculation evaluation is whatever you will get as an expression, you will get like this form. Why I'm saying this thing? Because whatever the result is coming, it is on a text box. So in text box, you have an expression like this, right? And when you get an expression, it would be stored in some variable, like I store it in some a variable. So because it's an expression, it is always in a string form because it is in a text box. So it is always in a string form automatically. So when you get it, it is always in a string form. When it is in a string form, what do you need to do? You need to just go back to this section. And from here, you will write the thing called eval. Eval is a predefined function. So Pranav, this is answer. And you need to just pass a here and it will evaluate it. Make sense? So this is the magic of eval. So eval is a predefined function. You need to just pass your expression. So only point is you need to grab the expression because expression is written in your text box. You need to get it. Document.getElementById is a hint. So you will get it and store it in some variable and then hand it over to the eval. Eval give a result and store this result in some variable and then print it. I hope, Pranav, I answer your question. Any other question, guys? Pranav is saying eval throwing multiplication. Let's try this out. So this is an expression and I just putting it here. So I think only Pranav, it will give in multiplication. It has some error. It is only and only when it is going out of range, right? If your range is much higher, right? I hope this is clear. Sunidhi is asking how can we embed CSS in JS? How we can embed CSS in JS? No. Sunidhi, we cannot embed CSS in JS. We are actually using a class there. So you need to create a CSS having a class and then you can add a class in a code, right? So you are actually using a predefined class. So there is something called class name. Through the class name, you can change a class, right? So we will see this thing in a upcoming examples. So only point is, Sunidhi, you need to remember document.getElementById. So I just give you a glance of this. It is more like document.getElementById. Let's assuming we have an ID. Right now we do not have this kind of ID. And when you have this ID, then you specify class name and whatever the class you have defined in your CSS file, right? So for example, your class name is red. So this red class is added on this X. I hope, Sunidhi, you understand this point. So if you want to draw a line on a winner, so you need to first go to the CSS, you need to define a class, and then you need to write a class on a field. So for example, on top of div, you need to define a line there. So you need to have the div ID, like assuming X is a div ID, and then there is something called class name that is an attribute, and inside it, you need to specify the name of a class. I hope, Sunidhi, you understand this point. So Nitin is asking, is eval convert string into numeric? Yes, it is actually converting and then it is evaluating it. Right. So this is just a solution for calculator thing, but eval is not recommended way. But because you are just a new guys, so just start first convert it with an eval. Once you done this exercise with eval, then I will tell you without eval. Right. So without eval is recommended. Right. Because eval is evil. If you just Google it, eval is evil. The dangerous part of eval is because eval take expression. In expression, you can write JavaScript. That is the problem. So it will execute the JavaScript. So when the hacker want to hack your application, they actually execute the JavaScript in your text box. That's why eval is evil. So, but right now we are just a beginner. That's why I tell you eval. Once all of you done with eval, then I will tell you without eval how you will do it. Because you need to write your logic for this. Make sense, guys? Any other question? So no more questions. So I hope I'm going to wind up the session, guys. I
Yes,
hope guys
sir. Thank you for the valuable session. I think the students are through with their doubts. Yes, sir.
Okay, one more thing, guys, I want to communicate, because if somebody don't know the HTML stuff, so we have prepared the HTML videos. So I will share a link on HTML videos. So also go through with the HTML videos. So that's a tutorial based videos on a YouTube channel. So you can learn the HTML stuff from there. Also, I shared the JavaScript intro tips. I mean, intro questions to all of you. I hope all of you walk through with the JavaScript intro questions. So that series I started on a YouTube, and that will be keep growing. So you will at the end you will have the lot of questions of JavaScript. So when you are going to some interview or internship kind of stuff, so you at least you know what sort of intro questions. Anubhav, we are also sharing the CSS video. So by today evening, you will get a CSS video. HTML is already uploaded on the same channel. So that I will share you the channel name also on a YouTube, right? On your WhatsApp group. So on a WhatsApp group, I will share. So you can walk through with all of them, right? Anubhav, I hope you are on a WhatsApp group. There I am sharing the link of the YouTube. So there I have shared